I'm Roger Willems. I'm based in Amsterdam. I run Roma Publications for around 20 years. I'm trained as a graphic designer, and I was starting my practice working for clients, mostly book publishers. I was also assistant of Karel Martens when I was still a student. And I really preferred working in the field of book design. And I did identities. I was doing small, like various graphic design things. But I really had a passion for books. But then with friends already in 1999, like before I started Roma Publications, I started to make publications with artists in my free time as a hobby, and this gradually took over my practice and became Roma Publications. So now I publish around 30 books a year, of which I design still most of them myself, and I hardly do any other commissioned work anymore. So I can focus completely on working with artists, other designers and friends, collaborators, also institutions, of course, and writers. Yeah, already when I was at art school, I figured out I really like to work in a commissioned setting. I like that. And I also like to try to find solution for other people's problems somehow, like, and also to use the technical challenges to stay within a budget and a timeline. So somehow I liked it, but I also knew that this was something I would like only for a short time, because I felt always a lot of pressure to perform and to fight with for your own ideas. So I also knew that working in a commissioned setting, you always have to make this compromises, and I'm very I like to do that, but it also kind of makes me empty. Like, so after a longer time, I knew that I should evolve myself to be more my own boss. Yeah, it was really intuition that I thought in the commissioned world I would not really be happy for a long time. He had a very big influence on me. First of all, when I met him, I was about to skip and change paths. I wanted almost to go to photography and more free art, because when I was about to graduate in my art school, I felt this design was too much going into identity and about commercial work, and that you are trained to become part of a bureau. And then by chance I came in touch with Karel, and I saw an example of how you could also be a designer and also achieve something. So when I started working for him, it was like a very personal experience to see how you could have a small scale independent practice with with all the aspects that I like to be involved with. So it was like a way, like a mentality that I admired, but also he introduced me into the field and gave me my first jobs from publishers that he worked with. And so he also pushed work to me, which I could do on my own. So he was also a practical, big help for me and support. Yeah. And then I felt when he started the Werkplaats Typografie, I was also having my studio in the same building, and I was working with him and with the students and with Richard Bierma, the colleague from Karel. And then I felt also that it became a bit too close. And for a couple of years, we were kind of separating, and I moved also a bit away from him. And I think I also needed to get out of his influence and find my own way, especially with Marc Manders, with artists of my own age, that I could develop more my own ideas. And then after some years, we also came back together again when we started getting in touch more often and publishing books together. So now I can say that we are really back to very, very nice way of collaborating and being friends. So I'm very happy with that. Yeah. Yeah, there is a very direct line, I feel, with Sandberg, and also a bit with Krauwel. And I think in general, the history of Dutch graphic design, especially like modernistic tradition, is that people accept designers as an author, kind of as an editor. So I also grew up with this idea that if you're working on something as a designer, you also expect to give your opinion and to really take part in the concept and take a responsibility. And that's something I can see as a tradition, maybe, that I also could build upon like that. For example, what inspired me from Sandberg is that he was a designer. He also did commissioned work. He made infographics, but he became an organizer, a director of the museum. But he also kept designing the catalogs. So for him, it was almost the other way around, that he did the design as something extra. But I really like that notion of being responsible for the content and the design, and being very close to the director, or being the director yourself, which was something that I found very attractive. Yeah, and this authorship you could also see, of course, at the work, I think, also of Wim Krauwel and Walter Nichols. Jan van Toren, people that, what you say, they were like close team with the director of an institute, and they had a lot of freedom also to give their input to the whole outcome of what they were doing. But I think when I grew up with my profession, when I became like developing my practice, it was also more harder. I thought it was an illusion that you could work like Wim Krauwel or like Jan van Toren or Walter Nichols, because the museums are also more depending on the marketing, and there's a lot of different forces that you have to work with. So also the design becomes more professionalized. And I really like more this amateurism of just doing it yourself. And I think that's the reason that I had to conclude, if the museum is not there anymore, that I can be on that level, I have to make my own institution. And I think the idea of Roma is almost like a museum or a gallery without an actual space, but it has the publishing program. And that gives a lot of freedom.
Well, we were just talking about the Sandberg catalogs, and that was something I already was collecting when I was a student, because they were very cheap. They were just in the second-hand bookstore for €1.50, and I really liked the design of them and the directness and the chain that they play with the papers, and also the story behind it, because of course I knew about Sandberg and what he was doing. And it also fascinated me that all those exhibitions were so long ago, sometimes even end of the 50s, early 60s. And you don't hear about them anymore, some names you don't recognize. But these catalogs were always around. They were like pamphlets that I could find in every Dutch second-hand bookshop. And you see they were always playful in a very economic way. So he was using paper stock that was left over sometimes, packing paper, and then playing with colors in an intuitive way. And as I understood it, he just made sketches while he had a meeting in the museum, and then he gave the sketches to the printer to work it out. So they have a very, very nice atmosphere and history behind. I found books made by a Dutch artist, J.C. van der Heijden. And this was the catalog he made himself for an exhibition in 1977 in the Haagse Gemeentemuseum. And his work was basically photography, painting, and installations, also with video. And his catalogs were very much like handmade, like almost photocopy atmosphere. And this book kind of opened my eyes that if you design a book, that you can make it an original. Because here you see he's always playing with the notion of reproduction. And it's also a theme in his work. So this is also an artist that I followed, and I discovered he made more books, and I later also met him, and we made some works together, and also a catalog, a new book. When I went to Karel Martens, I think the oases, this is the first oasis that Karel made. They were very inspiring for me because I think also for many other students, because this was really a beautiful investigation of typography within strict rules. So he had this 24/17 size. And this was the first issue we did. It was only in Dutch. And he invited all the students, later all the students from the werkplaats typografie, and I was, I think, the first one that could work on issues of oase with him. It's something very special because they were very rigid in a way. There's a lot of information, but they were always different within small margins. So it's very much also about details and how much you can say by changing some decisions. So every issue had really the design adapted to the subject. And I made 3 of them with Karel. So that was one of my first serious work. A little bit later, when I was still working with Karel, around the same time, he also introduced me to Sonsbeek exhibition, which was a public space exhibition in Arnhem, only taking place every few years. And Wigert Bierma, the designer also from Arnhem, he made a catalog for it. And it was Sonsbeek 1903. The cover was designed together with... he made this catalog, which was a beautiful book with a lot of source material behind the projects that were shown in the city. And one of the artists that was presented in this this exhibition was Marc Manders. And Karel Martens, he brought me to his exhibition as a little excursion while I was working with him. And that was the first time I met Marc. And also that I got to know the work of Wigert Bierma. And they both were a very strong influence for me the years after. I made around 35 things with Marc, including small papers and big catalogs. And if I have to pick out one, I could maybe show this one. because it's a quite radical one. So maybe this says something about my ideas as a designer. This book, it's a hardcover. It's called Several Drawings on Top of Each Other. Marc Manders on the spine, and it literally shows drawings. And if you look at this like a book, they're also on top of each other. It's like a pile of paper. So the book has like end papers, stand start papers. It's very minimal design. It has a series of titles in the big type for chapter 1, followed by first an installation shot where he had a pile of paper, and the first were all drawings, and then all the others behind it were still empty. So it's just to show kind of an endless stream of possibilities that you have with empty paper. So, and then the book very democratically shows all the drawings in the same size. So horizontal has the same format as the standing ones, and it only shows the title and the page number. And then after this chapter, and then at the very end of the book, there's a separate insert with a little introduction, and then an interview by Marije Langelaar about some of the drawings. So it gives some explanation on the ideas behind some of the drawings. And if you lose this one, this is the only information that is in the book. And yeah, I think that's a nice example, because it's on one hand it's a catalog, but it's also a very like straightforward book that has no compromises. It's really very sharp how we wanted to make it, and there's no distortion whatsoever. I think this is also it's nice to show, because this is the first Roma book I made, Roma number 1, and it was a little book with the drawings by Nagtzaam, and I made it just before I met Marc Manders. So it was Roma number 1, but we had no idea of making it like a publishing house. But because it was Roma and it was just made before I met Marc Manders, I started to continue this with Marc Manders, luckily with the same name, Manders, of 2 letters. And I think this book also was a very good introduction to Marc, because then we kind of discovered we were completely at the same level. And this was like drawings from Marc Nagtzaam with text, like fragments he took from magazines. And these text fragments are sources for his work, like one drawing you see there on the wall, Erik. So he collects these text details, fragments, and these are like the drawings where you see his collection. And then after this, you come to another part of the book, Smaller Moments, and then you see drawings of installations where the drawings were shown. So in a way, this book shows sources and kind of after results, but it's not documenting the actual drawings. They were in between. So I think it also shows a bit like that the book can be something else than a reproduction. This is the first book that comes really shortly after, and this is Colored Room with Black and White Scene. And I made this with Marc Manders in 1999. And that's it's also a conceptual book, because these are only titles, mostly titles of works that he didn't make by then. So they were like concepts for works, in words. And he showed that one title, this title, colored room with black and white scene was realized. Like here you see color photos of a colored room, and in it there's a black and white scene. So these photos represent one option to visualize the title. So this book is kind of a machine that all the titles can generate many visual works. So this was the first book I made with Marc Manders, which was kind of a start for something that could go on forever. It's true that I work in series within Roma. Like if I make a book with an artist and he comes back for another project, yeah, somehow I will prefer to continue working with that artist, because yeah, it's very nice to create series together, because you can build up some understanding, and also in one book you cannot say everything, because you have to decide on the content and also about the design. And it's really nice to be able to make a series. And also it's a bit like a gallery that you work with a certain amount of artists, and it's something like loyalty also to keep working together. And for some people I would also be maybe a bit disappointed if they would not return, because yeah, it also means that you like what you were doing. And of course it's also very nice if artists work with different publishers, but when they have the most important book to make, I hope that they come to me. It's something more like a friendship that you build, and not everyone is coming back because it's not possible and it's also not necessary. But with some people you create kind of a relationship through the books that is like part of the you're together. Together you are making Roma Publications, and you're together also using this as a platform. So it's not there's no reason to step out of that. Also because there's a lot of freedom, and we can always set our own parameters, and yeah, I don't have rules. So also financially, or like amount of copies, or do you need a title, everything is free. So yeah. This is the first, it's hand-bound copy, because it's already printed but not finished yet. And also we were waiting for paperbacks to put them in. So this is a handmade sample, and it will be closed with a sticker. So there you go. It's Karel Martens' Tokyo papers. Basically it's a series of 41, a little bit more than 40. I think he has maybe 60, but we selected it down to 41 with the cover included, of prints that he made on used receipts from Japan. And Ayumi said it had something to do with tobacco. So they're like receipts with amounts of packages of different brands of cigarettes. But of course, Karel couldn't read it. He just got them from a friend, Pierre Le Guillon. And he tried to print on them. And first it gave some difficulties, because it has like this carbon backsides. And he tried to print on this, which gave also some distortion. But like Karel is always taking a longer time for this, and it's growing, it's just drying, and puts another layer on it. And then at a certain point, when he had all this series in a box, we thought it was great to show them together in one package. So the book is basically, it's not open at the top. So all the prints have a front and they have a back side. And they're printed exactly on each other's side. And it's printed on a very thin paper, 65 grams. So it also feels a bit like the original papers, and they're on one-on-one scale, so there's no reduced image. And the cover is like a poster around it, like this. And for me, this was a very nice thing to work on during this COVID pandemic, because it's so sunny and so positive, and so much color. And you just read, you only read, you can kind of read the joy of playing with color, with ink, with layers, material. So, and some of them have an interesting backside. Some have like also complex prints on the back. When, if I talk about also my own design mentality, what I like about this also, here we didn't, if you go to the credits, there's no one mentioned as designer, because we just kind of made this by putting it together. So we selected, we talk about the paper, we asked some samples, I put it in the computer, he gives some remarks. So it's here, there's no, it's completely designed, but it's not an issue. It's just what it is. So the design, maybe where is the page number and the title, is something that, yeah, I cannot say, and Karel put it there or me put it there. So it's not an issue. Yeah, that's the most beautiful thing in design, I think, when it disappears, that it comes out as something beautiful.
Roma and publishing books is a bit then separate from the project space, but it's true that if you make books, I very much depend on also on book fairs, because then you meet your audience and you can really relate to people that actually respond to the books, and you see how they react on the content, on the design, and so I also like to go to book fairs myself as much as I can, but yeah, what you say, I have to be selective. So I went to maybe 6-7 book fairs a year, and so that worked fine. But on the other hand, it's true that it's so kind of it explodes also in a sense that it's very international, and it's kind of a global hype, and everyone follows by Instagram, and so there was also a kind of a need to be more local, visible, more local. But I always wanted that, but I never really had a chance or like a good location, or yeah. So some things came together by just being patient. That yeah, we got this space that was first owned by Idea Books, and when they moved out, we could take it over and make the front space, a project space, together with a group of people. So it was more like like a desire in the back of your head that you also want to be more visible locally, because it's weird sometimes that you're much more known in let's say in Tokyo than in your own street, and that's a beautiful element that is added now, because we can communicate with the neighbors and with friends, designers, also a lot of expat people coming to Amsterdam that can meet, and yeah, so now we are on hold, of course, for a while. That's a pity, but yeah, it has been a really great first year that we could do this. And as you know, we did this exhibition with all the work, all the books that Karel Martens designed over 60 years, and an exhibition about student publications from the Rietveld Academy. And the New York Art Book Fair Room C was a bit born out of frustration that we couldn't go to any fair. So kind of as a statement, we copied our Room C. So that's really a great thing that we want to develop further, and it gives especially this connection to also a local audience, but also of course, this is spread internationally because, yeah, you can show pictures and you can spread the news. So it's good for everything, yeah. And one important thing is that because this front space, enter, it's not a showroom for just Roma Publications or FW books, because Hans is also here with FW. But it's more meant as a not-for-profit project space to support the book, art book in general. So independent publishing, design, and yeah. So we call it enter, a space for books. And of course we will bring our own projects, but it's also open for yeah, the whole community.